Hi, this is Lori D, and I'm doing another rant. And I've done this one before. It just didn't take, so I've done it a couple times. It's about how writers have no labels, and I realize I'm putting myself in a little bit of a box here, because, well, I did grow up in a lower income community, in Chicagoland area. But I lived most of my adult life actually in Texas, and I've just come to this conclusion to where I've never really I've always lived in ghetto-ish areas, but I can't really say that uh, I I belong. I belonged where I lived ever, and I don't think I can do Takashi 6ix9ine after researching him. I just don't. My message doesn't. I don't know. Maybe I might change my mind, on the fence always. But there's one thing that I did agree with is that nobody from the hood is actually from the hood. Nobody belongs in the ghetto, and I totally that statement that I heard from him just totally I agree. Um, and especially if you live in the Chicagoland area, or probably not in Texas, but other places, or even in Texas, nobody who lives in a ghetto-ish areas from it belongs there. And to even insinuate that someone belongs there is kind of insulting. But in a really weird way, I belong because nobody belonged there. Does that make sense? Right. Okay, so nobody belongs. And I remember when I was growing up, when I was high school, anyone insinuated where I actually belonged, where I lived, it was like a huge insult to me. It's like, oh, you're crushing my dreams in two. And it really hurt my feelings. Um, but at the same time, I clearly didn't belong there. And I'm not talking about um, like I've always lived in ghettoish areas, but if you're gonna pigeonhole me and put a label on me, I guess I would be more of a hipster. Um, but most genuine hipsters always live in ghettoish areas. It's just a thing. Um, uh, Genuine hipsters do. But from the years from 2000 to 2010, um, everybody wanted to be a hipster. So not everybody who looked like a hipster or act like a hipster actually was a hipster. But I was I would be genuinely a hipster, but I never really called myself that. And most real hipsters would never label themselves because that's against the philosophy. Nobody who would actually you would call a hipster would ever call themselves a hipster. But since that was a while back, and I'm looking back, and I could say, oh yeah, I definitely was a hipster. Um, but I wasn't shopping at thrift stores and off of clearance racks because I was trying to be cool or anything. It's just because I didn't have a lot of money, and I still really wanted to look nice. But it was in Texas that was totally that was not an odd thing or a different thing. I fit right in, especially when I lived in Austin, Texas, but also in San Antonio, Texas. Um, I fit in pretty well, so I say it's never belonged where I was from or where I was actually living. But even when I lived in San Antonio, it was very strangely because I clearly didn't belong on the south side of San Antonio, but nobody belonged on the south side of San Antonio, especially my students. They all secretly belonged in Alamo Heights, and we all knew that. We all knew that was the fact. So Alamo Heights was the most expensive neighborhood in San Antonio. It's comparable to Lake Forest. So everybody secretly knew in their heart that they belonged in Alamo Heights, and you don't question that. You don't question that attitude. I think it leads to a lot of upward mobility, and you always think that the ghetto or the ghetto-ish areas are where people go when dreams die, but I that's not my experience. Um, even if you even if it does suck, um, and but you're allowed to mentally go somewhere else. You're allowed to dream about leaving, and if you've pretty much made up your mind that you're going to stay here forever, you have your heroes, you know, and you support your friends in their dreams, and them leaving. You're always everybody like even when I was in teacher college, they always trained me like to choose like a starfish in my classroom, somebody that I would like, hone in and support and everything like that. And that's I gotta plug my computer in; it's gonna die. Um, that's what I had to do. But that's kind of what happens, you know. Um, you choose the one that you're going to support and um, give extra help to, and they're going to like take off and go somewhere. And sometimes I was that student, I was the one getting extra help, the one that teachers paid more attention to. But at the same time, I got at the other end where um, other teachers, administrators just assumed that I uh, wasn't going to go anywhere because I guess I had a mild slang, and they could just tell that I was, you know, they were trying to predict my future for me. It was ridiculous, and you know, growing up like that, I always had more of a positive attitude about it and whatnot. Well, on the flip side, if you're like from an area like Naperville, Illinois, you're not allowed to. Everybody belongs to Naperville. You can't insinuate that nobody from Naperville doesn't belong in Naperville, and everybody belongs here. I think that's more trapping. Um, my husband has lived in Naperville his entire life. Has never even left. I've lived in Texas. I've lived in Spain. I've lived in South Korea. I've I'm I stayed had an extended stay in Mexico. Um, I've lived in Iowa. I've lived in Wisconsin. I've been all over um, the place. But it's because when you don't actually, no one thinks that you belong where you actually live. You have freedom to leave, and you have freedom to go find out where you do belong. And sometimes I think that people from ghettoish areas are the biggest posers, even though everybody says it's the opposite. Because I, I would, you're grown up with the attitude that you're going to need to adapt. Like if I go into, I mean, when I go into college, I was like, like you change and adapt to your environment, change your dialect, change your clothes. You're more willing to adapt to your surroundings. So um I I usually would pass. Everybody, you know I I can pass. I got a business professional accent. Yeah. So and we all can, like we all can, you know pull off the act. But if you're from Naperville and do the opposite, everybody's going to call you a poser, and they can't do it quite as well. They can't do the reverse. They can always you can always tell. You can always tell that they're not from here, or they're trying to be something that they're not. But if you're from a ghettoish area, you're expected to be something you're not. Do you understand what I'm saying? That's kind of strange. It's kind of strange how it's like the opposite of what that is. So it's weird for me. I grew up in the Chicagoland area, and now I'm back. And it's weird. I'm living 10 years, 15 years in Texas, and then moving back. You have to adjust. And maybe I can understand why people wouldn't believe me. But when I moved to Texas, I had to drop the chip on my shoulder. It didn't, people didn't like that. I had to immediately drop it. You know, they they're very I wouldn't say like the racial there, they see a white girl. So, I couldn't have a chip on my shoulder. I wasn't allowed to, especially if you're living in a ghettoish area. No one will allow you to have a chip on your shoulder. So I had to drop that, and then eventually I guess acted like I lived there. And it's so weird to have to move back to the Chicagoland area. And it's like everybody, it's weird for me. So, but I remember what it's like. And yeah, so uh, this is my shortest one I've ever done, right? So, um, yeah, I totally agree with them with that. That was like a really insightful thing about the how nobody belongs in the ghetto, and it makes me question as to why I would be posing when I've always lived in ghettoish areas my entire life. Maybe I'm more of a hipster, but that's actually the people who are producing the music, especially the hip hop music, um, and it doesn't matter what race you are. Everybody is everybody does has got a little bit of a nerd in them. You have to you have to be really like uh, into electronics and computers, and you have to spend a lot of time producing and editing. So everybody who does this is uh, sort of like a little nerdy in a way. So um, it's always weird because I've always lived in ghettoish areas, and for the first part of my life, it would be more like um, what you would imagine, but for the most intents and purposes, I've been like a hipster. So I wouldn't. I mean, um, I'm not trying to be anything I'm not. But um, so why does Takashi 69 belong and not me? That's my question. When he does not live there, he's very rich. He's so rich he's handing out $100 bills in Dominican Republic. Oh, why does he belong and not me? I know he's involved in a couple. He was affiliated with a couple of gangs. He actually sold drugs, and he's not posing. He is who he is. And I was like blown away because a lot of performers put on a persona and they're not really, they're just, putting on an act, but he's the real deal as far as that goes. But the mentality, um, like in your Chicago, there's like a city's mentality and a suburban mentality. And to me, he comes off as having a more suburban mentality. So he's got a suburban mentality. He's very he's very wealthy. Um, um, he grew up in poverty, but he's not living in poverty anymore. So why would you think that he belongs, but not me? You know, and they would say, well, you're white, but he's Mexican. You know, so it's weird how people like want to pigeonhole people with labels, and no writers have labels. No musicians have labels. We got to write all styles of music and learn all kinds of music. There's no pigeonholing holding a writer. A writer writes about everything. A writer can write in any style, and they can perform in any style. And uh, and if they don't, they're not going to be relevant. They're never going to make it and be anybody or go anywhere. So you have to like appreciate all styles of music, and you have to be able to adapt to whatever situation that you're in. So um, it's weird for me. Uh, well, this is Lori D, and you have a great day. I'm going to sign out now. And maybe I'll go. I've been taking off a week or so because it's been like Hanukkah, so I've been spending more time with my family. Um, wait, I'm not doing karaoke. So maybe that's why I haven't been doing the karaoke videos or even producing the songs as much because it's like the holidays. So happy holidays. This is Laura D. Have a great day.